Roger Bennett, and I represent the Eagle's Nest Flute Circle at Perry Point VA Medical Center, Perryville, Maryland. And today, the Eagle's Nest Flute Circle would like to show you and teach you a little bit about playing the Native American Style Flute. Now, what I'm holding here is a wooden version. It is what's known as a Western Plains style Native American flute. It has 6 holes. You will find variants in different flutes. Now, the Native American style flute is a very soulful, healing, and introspective musical instrument that is very easy to play. Now, we're going to cover some basics, but one thing I wanted to point out to you. The holes are numbered. Hole 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This is important because hole number 4, right here, you're not going to use it first. You can put a piece of tape on it, piece of leather, something, just seal off that hole, because you're not going to use it in the initial stages of playing. It's more of an advanced playing technique that once you do become comfortable with playing the flute, you're going to start integrating that in, because what that does, it gives you 3 slightly different notes and allows you to play the chromatic scale or Western style scale to play contemporary music. Now, before we get started, you're going to use these 3 fingers on each hand. You are not going to use the fingertip. You're going to use the fleshy pad of the fingertip, right like that. Reason being, if you're trying to use your fingertip, it's not only uncomfortable, but you will not seal the holes correctly. So what you want to do is lay your fingers flat across the hole. Now, you don't require a very strong grip. It's not, as long as you seal the holes, you'll be fine. Okay? It does not matter where you use left hand high or left hand low. That's a perfectly acceptable way to play. It's whichever way is most comfortable to you as a player. Myself, I like right hand low, left hand high. Now, I also, before we get started on the basic scale, I want you to think of a ladder. Now, as you're climbing a ladder, you use the rung going up, but you don't use it again till you come back down. The scale on the native flute works the same way. As we're going up, leave the finger holes open as we go, like this. Now, also keep in mind that what I've shown you, my hands are way up here. That's so you could see what I was doing. In actuality, you only have to lift your fingers up just a little bit. And you don't want to do this because it's harder to come down and find the hole again. So keep that in mind. So again, the scale. Now, on the pentatonic scale, which is the regular scale of a Native American flute, penta meaning 5, every note harmonizes with the notes above and below it. So you can play music simply by jumping around on the flute. You can do intervals. So the way you start, however, is like any other instrument. You're going to practice the scale. Keep in mind, it's also a very gentle breath we're blowing into the flute. Doesn't take a lot of air. And you're going to practice that scale. You're going to practice it until you get fluid with it. Now, I must confess at this point, I'm being a bit sneaky because while you're practicing that scale, you're learning two things without realizing it. First, your fingers are learning where the finger holes are, and you're building muscle memory in those fingers, which will bring you dexterity in playing. The other thing is you're learning the proper breathing for the flute. The flute will teach you how to breathe. It's like that. So now we're going to keep practicing our scale until we're comfortable. We're going to go. Once we've done that, we're going to start experimenting. I encourage you to play the music that's inside of you first before you attempt to try to play a song that you know. Even though everyone's tempted, and one of the first songs that everyone for some reason tries to do is Amazing Grace because it's just so beautiful on a native flute. But I encourage you to play what's inside you first. Play what you feel. If you're sad, play a sad song. If you're happy, play a happy song. We are also going to show you ways to embellish your playing. Now, embellishments are simply little add-ons that you do to enhance the playing or the mood. One of the first ones I'll show you is half-holing, and that is simply sliding your finger back just a little bit to open half the hole. And what that does is there's some songs that you need that note in between the first and second hole to properly play things like Amazing Grace. It's a little tricky to get the hang of half-holing, but it's well worth the effort. The next thing we're going to do is say you want a sharply defined, like a staccato, a bark type note where it's clearly defined. You do that by using the tip of the tongue against the back of the teeth or the roof of the mouth, either one. It's like saying the letter T without vocalizing it. So, the next one we're going to cover is trilling. Trilling is fluttering the tip of the tongue against the roof of the mouth, like that. What if you want a little jazzy note, a slide? That's done two different ways. The first way is to roll the finger forward while you're playing and then roll it back, just like that. Can alternately be done by sliding the finger to the side. And you can work that into your music. Now we've covered the basic embellishments. Now let's cover a thing called grace notes. Grace notes is just like a little half-second note. caught that just a little pop. Pops are another thing. And that's your just quickly flutters. Now, this is one of the most beautiful enhancements you can do. It's also the simplest. That's done. You're just tapping on top of the hole. Now, the two most common problems that people have when they're first starting out is not covering the finger hole properly and sealing the hole. You're going to know that you've done that when you get this. When you get a squeal, something's not covered correctly. Now, when you're playing the flute, you're not going to be able to look straight down and see which finger hole's giving me the problem. But if you go to a mirror and get the back view, you'll be able to see where your problem is and correct it. The other thing that most people do incorrectly when they first start out is they don't remember to leave the finger holes open as they go up the scale. And it sounds off. So remember, seal the holes. Remember to leave the finger holes open as you go up and down the scale. Take your time. Enjoy the music. Remember, it's a light breath. Oh, and the flute, the end of the flute does not go in your mouth. It goes against your lips like this. If you put it in your mouth, it's going to have a tendency to wet out quickly. Now, what wetting out is, there's a tiny little air channel underneath this block here. Through condensation from the breath and the difference in the air temperature in the room, occasionally this flute will just want to clog up with moisture and not be able to play. Now, if that happens to you, put one finger over the square hole and another on top and blow hard. And then shake the flute out. Don't do it over your wife's carpet. She might get a little upset. But that's how you clear it, and then you can go on and play. Now, if you've played too long and it's just continually wetting out, the reason that the parts, and we'll cover the parts next, the reason that they're tied on is so this can be removed and the entire flute can dry. So if it starts continually wetting out on you, just take the bird off. Set it aside, someplace like that on a paper towel so it'll drain out. Now, when you go to put it back together, you'll notice that rectangular hole. And if you're very careful, you'll see the edge of that rectangular hole. And that's going to align with the back wall of this chimney. Now, that's the proper position. Sometimes they like to be just a hair behind. Okay, now we're going to cover the parts of the flute. This is known as the bore. This is called the bird, the mouthpiece. Now, it's a two-chambered flute. The back is hollow. There's a solid divider wall about here. The air comes up through a hole in the back. It hits the bottom of the bird and is directed through a tiny air channel. Don't know if you can see it or not there, but it's only about a 32nd of an inch deep, and the air is directed out. It goes across the front of that rectangular hole, which is beveled, and the air actually splits, and that oscillation is what generates the sound. There's no reeds or anything like that. It's just all air movement. I normally have a half a flute that I demonstrate that with, but I've misplaced mine right now. I do apologize. The flute is a very soulful instrument, as I said before. It's also a healing instrument. It heals from the inside out. Whatever frustrations or anger or negative emotion that you're feeling, get a flute. Play that flute. Let it heal you from the inside out. A good place to play the flute is in nature. But if you go outside and play, do not be surprised if you get visitors. And I'm not necessarily talking about human visitors, though they do come too. Animals are drawn to the sound of the flute. They're curious about it. They love it. I've had big deer walk right up to me while I was playing. I've had birds come out of trees. So don't be startled if that happens. It's a wonderful thing. Now we've got a couple more members of the Eagle's Nest Flute Circle that will demonstrate a couple of songs for you. And keep in mind, this is just one type of Native American flute. As time permits, we'll make perhaps an additional video showing you some of the other types, like the southwestern rim blowns. There are many different types of flutes that Native Americans made in North America. This one's the most popular. So thank you, and do enjoy your flute. Happy fluting!